So the way things work in December has always been the same. I took a little bit of extra time to make sure I covered as many records as I could from December. It was just about a week of reviews, and we're at a top 10 albums of December here, probably halfway through December when I publish this. In general, I try not to rush through this last list. A lot of great stuff comes out in the last couple weeks of December, and of course, I probably missed a few great things here and there. So it's whatever we can do before the end of the year. Stuff has to start. This is a death doom metal band, a duo from what I understand, and one that does a particularly fine job of creating death doom metal, which is a little bit modern, a little bit stony in the way that it presents the riff. It's riff centered and song oriented. This is not a droning band or a purely atmospheric group, but one that has songs in the way that earlier Hooded Menace and Coffins had songs and weren't too focused on just atmospheric drift and things like that. So, fine demo, pretty short, easy to get into, tons of great riffs, and a pretty sharp sound. I think this band is basically album ready if they keep writing songs at this level, and I'd like to see where they take it because this demo got me interested. Quarmal is All is here at number 9. This is a debut full-length album from Lords of Quarmal. This comes from Olympia, Washington-based artist Ruben Story, who's a member of Vision Master and Christian Mistress as well. So if you're a fan of classic adventure metal is what I would call it, Manila Road and Slewfag and that kind of thing, this sort of has the movement of those bands in a sense that it is fantasy centered, it is bardic, it is telling a story, and it's kind of hitting a bunch of riffs as it goes along. It's very influenced by classic heavy metal and heavy rock in the way that it's structured, and it's a little bit more abrupt. It's pushed out with the personality of the artist is right there, where there's a little bit of punk in everything that he does. There's a little bit of classic heavy rock and heavy metal, and it makes for an album that's full of personality but also has riffs. So I liked the first tape. I thought it was pretty good, but then I found this album was easier to get into. It was a little bit more fleshed out, and now I know a little bit more about the author that he's singing about, Fritz Lieber, and some of the stories that this is centered around. So that gives some extra context as to why this is interesting to me. But check it out yourself and see what you think. Embers is the debut full-length album from Kildonan, a solo record from a Scottish musician who's fairly prolific between a bunch of groups, Hamish McIntosh, and this record it's got a little bit of like a depressive black metal side to it. It's atmospheric black metal. It's something that's a little bit avant-garde. And so there's a lot that went into it to make it distinct. It really stood out for me, this record in general. And I think that the more time you spend with it, the more it delivers a unique personality. The vocals are pretty out there a lot of the time, and it creates every song is its own event. It's something that it ties together overall, but also entertains throughout by just the strong personality being thrown around. So, pretty cool record and well worth recommending. I believe La Società degli Eterni is the eighth full-length album from Tony Tears, an Italian progressive rock, heavy rock, and doom metal artist who's been around for quite some time. And this record it's a fusion of everything that Tony Tears kind of does best, both as a guitarist and a heavy metal songwriter, but also as someone who is heavily interested and invested in classic progressive rock and horror rock and doom and all these things that create a very distinct style of Italian doom metal, but also relates to not only the tradition but their own personality that they've developed over the years. So Sure, if you're a fan of a lot of the classic Italian doom personalities, you'll feel some of that is in there in terms of the general combination. But overall, this is a very personal record that has a lot of its own personality going into it. So it was one of the cooler things that I happened upon this month, and certainly something that's worth recommending to people who like the more esoteric and personality rich side of Italian cult metal and rock. Corona Tenebra is the latest EP from Polish black metal group Totus Tribe, and I guess if you're interested in Polish black metal that is modern, melodic, a little bit influenced by modern music, but still has a sort of a black metal center to it. This is an interesting enough record. There's probably a little bit of recency bias that had led to me putting this higher up on the list, but it is a striking listen and one that has been well crafted here. I think that the overall design of the record, the performances on it, I think the drumming is particularly fine. I think the album art and its presentation is particularly fine. This is a good introduction to this band if you're interested in this realm of Polish black metal. Path to Oblivion is something a little bit different for Epitaph. This is essentially the band that had continued on from Black Hole and where they started back in the day, and because of that, everything that they do is it's been pretty esoteric over the years. Every record is a little bit different. Different vocalists have shown up, and that has changed their focus and their dynamic over the years. This is true to Path to Oblivion in the sense that they've brought in a new vocalist who is much more straightforward in his style than a lot of the past vocalists, and it's meant that this record is much more straightforward than anything Epitaph have done before. This is very much a record I would consider, it's got the horror Italian doom style there, but it also has a very strong Candlemass influence, and that kind of overtakes the thought here, and that it's not weird enough, but it's a great doom metal album, and I don't need this record to be weird to be good. It's still dark. It's still there's still great songwriters. There's plenty of riffs on this record. So if you're a fan of doom metal that's a little bit dark but just traditional, I think that this is a good compromise between this strange progressive rock and heavy doom metal side of the band and just traditional stuff like Candlemass in terms of its presentation, its cadence, and a little bit of the epic old school feeling of it. So check it out, see what you think. The worst thing that anyone could do to me in December is give me a great black metal record to dissect. I meant to review In Omnia Paratus. I didn't have time to do it. I took some extended time off towards the end of the year and meant to get around to it. Never actually did. I do think this is one of the better black metal bands around in terms of what's coming out of Germany that has it's developing its own personality over time. It's not leaning into progressivisms so much as tuneful aspects. And there's the catchier side of this band that is almost pagan black metal influenced that I like quite a bit. I like how they're evolving into something a little bit more melodic, and overall I think this is one of their most consistent albums. As much as I love the previous record and scored it very highly, I think this is even more interesting throughout. It has less of the outright tuneful moments in terms of just waiting for those to hit, but once they do start, fine album, completely memorable, and just an act you should be following if you're a fan of black metal that also has a tuneful Vulcan aspect or any sort of pagan black metal ritual involved. So the thing I loved about the Grand Arc of Madness from Sarcophagum, which comes in at number 3, is that it is a complete thought. It is a fluid thought that finishes in under 35 minutes or so, and it goes through 4 songs that are involved storytelling pieces that all feel complete. All of this fusion leads to a semi-dissonant blackened death metal record that is surprisingly respectful of my time, gets right to the point in every song, and develops something that is worthwhile in the process. I think that the efficiency of the record is almost too sharp. I think that they could have expanded on the atmospheres of the record just a little bit, but the fact that they cut it off where they do feels very confident. It feels like a perfect way to introduce a band for a debut. And again, it doesn't overstay its welcome to the point where any of this would feel like it was droning or annoying or whatever. So really fine way to present themselves for a debut, and probably one of the more underrated records here just because of 2024, because it was set at the end of the year. I think it makes sense to celebrate the fact that the Abysmal Womb is good at all, because Moondark put out a demo back in 1993, and everyone involved moved on to other bands that are better known. But the fact that that Moondark record was good, it was a unique bit of death doom metal from the early 90s Swedish death metal scene, from people who were better known from bands like Interment and Uncanny and eventually Delamort and whatnot. So the fact that this has never been picked up and reassessed until now kind of makes sense. But the fact that this is so good is surprising. It's just a great death doom metal album in general. It's from folks who definitely know what they're doing. It's some of my favorite performances from this vocalist, who's also in October Tide and a couple other bands like Cryptan and whatnot. So overall, I think this is just an extreme showing. It's a perfect death doom metal record from folks that are good, from a lot of great things on their resume. But everything came together for this record, and they delivered something that is authentically old school. It sounds clear and crisp and modern and dynamic without taking any of the darkness out of the music. I think these songs are written brilliantly in the style of the 1993 demo, and it all just stacks up. There's literally nothing wrong with this record. It's very good, and if you like riffs, they've got those too. So check that out for yourself. So at number 1, Austere Dawning from Mont Penumbra. This record is a little bit of a step forward for the band in terms of creating an overall fusion of all of their interests in modern times. The artist has been around for a while. He's played in quite a few bands, but this particular record, the production values are just a little bit louder and sharper. The album's focus is just a little bit sharper. The guitar work really carries this thing. It's fantastic overall. I think that as a guitarist, he's only escalating his capabilities in terms of techniques and just crafting songs. And the addition of the session drums here makes all the difference in terms of just extra techniques and being able to flip between more classic styles of black metal and more modern techniques. It all gears together in a way where the machine is working in mysterious ways. So superior album to most anything else I heard in December. Great record overall, and worth some extra attention just for how good it is. So that's the album of the month for me.